The news that the Bank of England was considering redesigning the banknotes, was going to make them more modern, more relevant, was having a consultation, and you could write in to say, we don't want those boring figures from history, those incredible people who made our nation great. Instead, we want to have something that's more up-to-date, more avant-garde, perhaps a bridge or something very exciting like that. Let's be more European dull. Made me think about the value of money and how it works. Something I've often thought about because my father wrote a book in the 1970s when inflation was high called The Reigning Error, about how gold provided value and paper currencies didn't. And this is, of course, true. The first paper currency known in history that is government approved is in the Song dynasty in China. Just to give comparison for English listeners, that's the time when King Canute was King of England. So in 1024, Canute had become King of England in 1016. China was already issuing paper money. Eventually, it lost all its value. And this has happened to every paper currency that has ever been issued. And the English followed a bit later. We didn't get around to paper currency until 1694, when the Bank of England issued its first banknotes. But real paper currency only comes in 1759, when there's a shortage of gold. And from then on, it comes in and out, normally up until 1914, with gold convertibility. From 1660, the glorious return of Charles II, up until 1914, the purchasing power of a pound remained almost exactly the same. In fact, it increased very slightly. Gold remained a solid store of value as well as a means of exchange. Those are the two aspects a currency has to have. Means of exchange, that's easy. You accept a coin when you have your services bought or you sell goods. Storekeepers accept them. Exchange is really easy in terms of using money, and you know that if you do it in an electronic transaction, a credit card transaction, that you can ultimately get the cash from a bank if that's what you want. You can get it in notes. The second issue, the store of value, is harder. And paper currencies have never provided a store of value. They have always led to inflation. And inflation is another means of tax because the government issues its debt obligations in its own currency. And because the value of that currency declines, it pays them back in money that is worth less. And it's a tax that falls on people who own government bonds, gilt issuance in this country, but it also falls on people with fixed incomes for other reasons. So pensions that aren't increased get less valuable as inflation takes place. So paper currencies are not a good store of value. Now, how does this relate back to what the Bank of England's doing? Well, the Bank of England is making a fundamental mistake in redesigning its currency because the way to preserve value is to create the illusion that it exists. And I've got here a couple of coins that it's fascinating to look at. I have a £1 coin, one of the multi-sided ones that were produced recently with the Queen, the late Queen's head on it. It says it's worth £1. It's got a milled edge. The milled edge is interesting because that comes about to stop clipping of the coinage. As the base metal in this isn't worth anything, clipping the coinage doesn't help you. And it's fascinating because it looks very, very similar to this coin here. Now, this coin is a gold sovereign, minted in the reign of the late Queen, minted in 1976. They're minted most years and sold by the Royal Mint. They're available to collectors. This coin that from 1660 to 1914 had a weight of gold worth £1 is now worth £575. In 1914, before the First World War, you could have gone into a bank with a banknote and said, I want my gold coin in exchange for this banknote, and you would have been given it. You can do the same today, and you'll get given this. If you say, I should like coins, you go into the Bank of England, but this coin has no intrinsic value. But look at them side by side. Queen's head is very similar. The one on my right is the earlier Queen's head, the updated one on the left, but the size is very similar. Look, they pretty much match in size. Thickness is a bit different. The gold is a bit thinner than the modern coin, but they're designed to look the same to create that illusion of continuity and of value. And that's why banknotes have had people of authority on them. Why did they put the Queen's head on in the 1960s? Just at the point at which inflation was taking on and the biggest devaluation was taking place, to make it look authoritative, regal, powerful, as if it were real money. Changing it, taking off the historic figures, the people who have forged our history, is a mistake because it undermines the illusion. But it is and always has been an illusion. Paper currencies have no value beyond your confidence in that currency. And when things go wrong, when people decide that they no longer have confidence in that paper currency, you get hyperinflation. So the Weimar Republic, famously, people took wheelbarrows of money to buy a loaf of bread. They ended up with so many noughts on the currency, they overprinted notes because the illusion had collapsed. The same happened in Mugabe's Zimbabwe with another hyperinflation when the value of currency collapsed. And so it's important to maintain a feeling of value if you've got a paper currency. As with the coins, the modern coins have no intrinsic value. I also have here actually an interesting silver shilling from the reign of Charles I that was found in the garden. Silver also has an intrinsic value. So this coin has a weight of metal value. It's actually lower than its value to collectors, but this isn't a particularly valuable or good example. But silver has a value as does gold. Cupro-nickel simply does not. So the bank, which is charged with keeping inflation under control, charged with keeping confidence in the currency, is making a classic mistake. They must believe their own propaganda that paper money has real value. It doesn't. It's an illusion. Gold has real value. Possibly even Bitcoin has real value because it's hard to produce. It can't just be created by the will of the government. Paper doesn't. The government can just, as it did post-2008, print billions and billions of pounds without anything underpinning it. It can pay its debts. It can borrow in pounds that the Bank of England has created. You can't do that with the physicality of gold. It's why it's important to maintain the illusion. If we lose confidence, that has serious economic consequences. And it's why gold is great. You can read more about this on Substack if you want. I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago.